Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for sticking with us. For the end of the day, we have a fantastic panel showing some transatlantic alliance and coordination on Iran. We have two respected members of parliament. We have Mr. Ali Ehsassi, MP from Canada, and Ms. Darya Safai, MP from Belgium. And moderating today's conversation is the estimable Karim Sadjadpour, who also happens to be a good friend of Mufti, and we're very glad to have you here, Karim. Karim is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and one of Washington's most respected Iran watchers and analysts, to moderate today's conversation on maximum support and how we can expand that beyond just the United States to other European and Canadian and other Western powers. So, Karim, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you all so much. This has been such a terrific discussion today. And, when I was growing up in the U.S., there were no role models for those of us who thought about the life and politics. It was really, when you thought about Iran, it was Ayatollah Khomeini. And inside Western governments, whether it was the United States or Canada or Europe, there were really no examples of prominent diaspora Iranians. So I'm so proud of Ali Ehsassi and Darya Safai, who are real role models not only for their own constituencies in Canada and Belgium, but also for many millions of Iranians. So Ali Ehsassi, to my far right, is an old friend. He's been a member of parliament in Canada since 2015. Darya Safai has been a member of parliament in Belgium from 2019 onwards. I heard someone say this morning talking about the importance of bipartisanship. Well, they're from differing parties, in that Ali is a member of a Liberal Party in Canada, Darya is a member of a Conservative Party in Belgium. But I think on this issue, there's probably a unity of purpose. So I thought what I'll do is start off with a few broad questions. I'd like to limit my times and then quickly open it up to all of you. So please have your questions ready. And perhaps the first question I'd like to start with, and I'll start with you, Ali, and then to Darya, is I'm curious whether you believe that there has been a fundamental shift in Canadian public opinion about Iran, and within the halls of power in Canada, a fundamental shift in the belief that the Islamic Republic of Iran is no longer reformable.
Well, first of all, just wanted to say hi, Karim. It's great to see you here. I also wanted to thank Mufti. I think today is a huge step forward because I think the global community has heard from all of us over the course of the past 6 months. But it's important that we move forward and that we actually provide policy prescriptions, which is exactly what Mufti has been doing. Now, with respect to Canada's attitude towards Iran, this is a regime that has always been considered loathsome in Canada. Obviously, it goes back to 2004 when the Iranian-Canadian photojournalist Ms. Zahra Kazemi was killed in such a tragic manner. In addition to that, as you know full well, we had to deal with the terrible tragedy of PS 752 3 years ago. I think the problem we had up until more recently is many people labored under the illusion that there were good guys in Iran and there were bad guys. And I have to say, there were occasions where they would tell me that some of these Iranian diplomats are so incredibly charming and learned in fighting the good fight. Thank goodness, thanks to all the efforts and hard work of the Iranian-Canadian community, I think that they don't labor under that illusion anymore. And they recognize full well that the vast majority of Iranians want to see an end to this despicable regime, and that they should be focused on how we can move forward and how we can support Iranians in their courageous quest.
Thank you so much. Darya, how do you see not only the situation in Belgium, but more broadly in Europe? Has that fundamental shift also taken place in both the European public opinion, but also in the halls of power, that this is a regime which no longer can be reformed?
First of all, I wanted to thank you for your invitation, Nofti. Thank you, Nofti. And also, I'm so glad to be among you guys today. And I'm so proud of the Iranian, and I feel so warm when I am with you guys. I wanted to say about the changing of the mentality in Europe in a global form of it. I have seen a lots of changes. Sometimes we forget that we are only 6 months after Massa, and the things that we have achieved, like getting the totally agreement of the European Parliament about the resolution of putting IRGC on the terror list of Europe. This is a big achievement. It was not possible 6 months ago. But of course, it's not enough. But let's do it together and continue to do it again. But when I look at it several years ago, there was just like reform can help. Reform is what the people in Iran, they want. I remember when I wrote an article and for the newspaper, and they talked about, no, you don't know really what the Iranian people they want. You are just a dissident abroad. And when I look at it today, and they are just sending me the emails to ask my opinion, the opinion of Iranian people, I see a big differences. And even in the parliament, when I was busy 4 years ago, I was elected in 2019. We had Bloody November, and I wanted my colleagues to sign something for just supporting this protest. I saw my colleague, they didn't know about anything about Iran. But after 4 years, and okay, of course, having me in a parliament is just something that they cannot ignore. They have changed. Not only my party support Iranian people, the whole other parties from left to right, they just stand by Iranian people, and they hope that Iranian people can change Iran, but also the whole world, and they know it. So I'm glad to say that there are a lot who has been changed, but we should continue.
Thank you so much. So you both won elections, which is not common among diaspora Iranians, and to win elections you have to persuade people. And I want to ask you a two-part question on the art of persuasion. One is how, if you were advising the opposition in Iran, how would you advise them to persuade more Iranians to join the cause of the opposition? That's part one. And part two is, how would you persuade the diaspora to better persuade whether it's European MPs or the White House to support the cause of political change in Iran and these policies, prescriptions which Nufti has released today? I'll start with you, Ali.
Thank you. I was hoping you would go to Darya first, but I'll go with that. Great question. I think it has been very, very helpful to see our diaspora very, very active in numerous countries around the world. That has really raised their awareness as to how important it is that they focus on the issue of Iran as well. But I would say that as much as it's important for us all to demonstrate that we are united in wanting to see an end to this regime, that we should really try to do numerous other things so that they will focus their minds and they will be supportive of our efforts. First of all, we keep trying to persuade European countries or North American countries as to how terrible and horrid the regime is. Believe me, anyone who has any passing familiarity with the Iranian regime will know that it is a terrible regime. A country that does not uphold the most fundamental civic rights for its own people will obviously be a menace to the region in which it's situated, and a menace to the international community. So I am firmly of the view that Western governments also understand that this is a terrible regime, and that we are all better off without the Iranian regime. Where we should be focused on is providing concrete example as to what it is they can possibly do. We also have to shy away from being divided. I have seen that far too often. We're trying to push each other out of the way to say, hey, I understand the aspirations of the Iranian people better. That is not very, very helpful. We have to continue to be united, irrespective of whatever our perspectives are. And that's why it's very important to have people from different political persuasions sitting next to each other and talking about the significance of focusing on Iran. But also, in addition to that, I think all of our efforts should really be focused on being responsive to the daily challenges that Iranians face within Iran. It's no secret that this is one of the worst run countries in the world. Iranians have to contend with the worst economic situation imaginable. They have to deal with suffocating existence every single day. So to the extent that we do offer proposals, they should be squarely focused on the challenges that Iranians back in Iran are facing in their daily lives.
First of all, I should begin to say that about the Iranian diaspora and outside Iran, they have done a lot, and they have done almost everything. Just a little example to say the reason that European Parliament has voted positively for IRGC, against IRGC, was the presence of thousands of Iranians on 16 January in Strasbourg. I mean, without them, there is no voice. You can just say it in the parliaments, but without this big amount of people who are just shouting for their country to make them believe in what they want to do is the good thing for the world, that was powerful. And that was exactly on that moment that even the president of the European Parliament, without knowing from before that she had a speech, she came outside and listen carefully. She said, to you Iranian people, you are on the good side of the history and we support you. So to say that this is only the power of our voice all together and unity all together. And also my, like in the parliaments, of course, I try to be more European Parliament member of the parliament, because this is how you should convince them to help the Iranian people, just talking their own languages. That means you should know, let them know that what you are doing is good, that it is for Iranian people, but also please put your own benefits on the table and look at it carefully. Isn't it better for you as European countries to have a democratic, liberal, secular future in Iran in place of that terrorist that now is ruling the country? Iran has a big potential, but please use it for your own belongs. And this is what I am trying to do there. I mean, I put the things that it is important for European countries, like they have a big problem with extreme Islamism in Europe. I invite them to listen carefully to what Iranian people they want. Secularism, the only country in the region who says, we don't want no more Islam to be in the politic. We want them separately. So why don't you use this opportunity to kill extreme Islamism in the whole world? Because I give always the example like, as you know, when communism was in power, you had a big problem with this communism ideology. But when Soviet Union was finished, this communism was little by little dead. So let's do it with extreme Islamism, and the roots of this tree is there in Islamic Republic of Iran. And then we will have safety, we will have prosperity in the whole region. And also migration. Europe is having a big problem with this problem. You should talk to them. If Iran is prosper and a good country, why the Iranian? We are such a long time here, but we want to be in our own country. Let it happen. And if we are a good country, then we can have a lots of other potential that Europe can use. And this is how we should continue our fight together in the parliaments and outside it.
You know, there was actually a statistic I saw from a regime official, former Minister of Science and Technology, who estimated that the cost of Iran's annual brain drain is about $150 billion annually, which is almost as much as their oil exports. So it's quite remarkable. I only have one more question for the speakers, so please have your questions ready. My final question is with regards to one of the maximum support prescriptions of Mufti's booklet today, which is to prevent Western countries from being a safe haven for Islamic Republic officials and their offspring and their capital. And this is much more egregious in Canada and Europe than it is in the United States. And so I'm curious, to what extent have you guys been involved in these conversations, and how do we deter this challenge?
Absolutely. Before getting to that, I just wanted to say one thing, if I may. And that is, I think we should all be very, very optimistic that courageous Iranians will prevail. Now, you're looking at me wondering why I would say that. First of all, we have all been inspired by how courageous and how defiant young Iranians have been. In addition to that, we do know that polls that have been conducted within Iran demonstrate that as much as 80% of Iranians are fed up with this regime. And there's no reason for them not to be fed up. They have suffered through 44 years of mismanagement, kleptocracy, and the lack of civil rights. In addition to that, let's look at the other elements as well. We have a diaspora, and this really ties in with what you were saying, Karim, which is 8 million strong. This is a diaspora spread out in various countries around the world that is truly impressive. Every realm of life you look at, there are Iranian Americans, Iranian Canadians, Iranian Europeans who are doing an exceptional job. So let's have faith that members of the diaspora are also going to put their shoulders to the wheel. Lastly, I'm so happy to see that Iranians are getting along. They're working together. We see a broad-based coalition of Iranians coming together and recognizing that they all have to work together. So if you look at all those elements and you recognize full well that the Islamic regime is bereft of any solutions, is incapable of reform, I have no doubt that better days are ahead and that we will prevail. As for your question with respect to the progeny of Iranian officials, I regret to say, let's bear in mind that we do live in countries where there is law and order. So as much as I find a lot of people reprehensible because of their family ties, there's no easy solution to those things. If someone has been living in the United States for many years, or in Canada, or anywhere else for that matter, I think the critical part really is that all of our respective countries should be doing a much better job screening to make sure that those people never are allowed to set foot in our countries, because they most certainly don't share the same values that we cherish, and they really are a menace to all of these countries. So first step should be that we should prevent these individuals from coming to our countries. And the second one, in my opinion, should be should they be living in our midst, I think various countries should be watching them like a hawk. Because so many of these people are just into wiring the ill-gotten gains out of Iran, and our agencies should be watching them very, very closely.
Thank you for all those explanations. I just should continue in the way that I wanted to say that there is a lot who has changed in our hearts in these last 6 months. And we know that, and we feel it. Already several months, we have slept with the iPhones in our hand, just looking at those innocent faces, crying for them, and more than crying for those children, innocent children, crying for their parents. I have seen my son beside me, and I thought about how lucky I am, but why? And how should I be embarrassed of being so lucky to have him, but why are they gone? So the things that in how our heart has been changed has guided us to a way, all together or nothing will happen. Today we are all together and we are beside each other, shoulder to shoulder, and we want only one thing, to take our beloved country back. And we will have it back. And I hope in this way we don't lose each other, because we are responsible for the bloods that we have lost. And we hope that it won't happen, but we are sure that it will happen. This is the way of revolution. We are still on the highest point of our revolution, although some of the countries or politicians or people asking me in my parliament, is it done? Is it finished? And I should always, every moment, I stand, although I know that we can do more, but I stand my foot and say, it's not finished and it won't finish. The day that it's finished is the day of the victory. And you will see and you will always remember me, because I know that we are going to finish it this time. They have been too far. And we, Iranian people, even if they thought maybe some years ago, we don't want to die, maybe we can reform our country, they know we cannot reform it. And they say, we will give our lives for our country. Let's do it all together. And I hope in this way, we use our other experiences and stand with each other, because we cannot do it alone and we cannot do it with only a group of members. We should be all together, and I hope soon we celebrate our freedom, the freedom of our country in our own country, where we find each other, we dance with each other, and we will be happy together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we have a time for a few questions, right? One question? A few, okay. So if you can please identify yourself and be as concise as possible. I will start in the front with my good friend Nazi Moinian. Is there a microphone? Here, I'll give you my microphone.
Thank you. Thank you for your wonderful remarks. Thank you, Karim, for asking excellent questions. Nazi Moinian from Middle East Institute. I wanted you to contrast the fight for freedom in Ukraine versus Iran, and in vis-a-vis your exposure and your experience in the parliament. How much of what's going on in Ukraine has sucked the oxygen out of the fight in Iran, and how much has it helped? Thank you.
It's in Europe. So
Okay, yeah, sure. And I have been once, 3 weeks ago, I have been to Ukraine. This is a very good question. And this has also changed a lot about how Europe is thinking about Iranian regime, because they have seen what we are saying is right. What we have said whole our life is the killers of Islamic Republic won't stop there, won't stop in Iran. they will come to you. They have been already several times to you with terrorism that they even planned in your own countries, like 2018 in Paris. Asadullah Assadi, terrorist and diplomat of the Islamic Republic, has planned a terrorist attack on the European soil. But even they have been further than that, and this is very important, and I try to emphasize it in the parliament, and also when 3 weeks ago I went to Ukrainian parliament to talk to my colleagues, I told them that they should also work more on it. This is important to remember them. Islamic Republic has chosen the enemies and friends, and you have a proof of it. You see it obviously that they have chosen to give Russia the drones and weapons against Ukraine, which is also European soil. And if Ukraine, which is now fighting for a year so courageously, they lose, is also one of the reasons is Islamic Republic. What do you want to do with them? And this is how also it had a very important influence on the mental change of the politicians and the ministers in European countries, because they see every day how they have been attacked through Russia and with the help of Islamic Republic of Iran.
So first of all, allow me to say, I think every single one of us can say how inspired we have been by Ukrainians. They have proven to be incredibly resilient, and they've been doing very, very difficult work. But I think it's important for all of us to bear in mind, there are many crises around the world. As we look at things. And it's important for us to bear that in mind, because obviously many of us are focused on Iran, but in addition to Iran and Ukraine, there are many more crises as well. And that's a challenge. And the challenge is, as Darya can tell you, when you first arrive in Parliament, you're fixated on the issues that you care about, but you come to realize there are so many different things that elected officials are trying to juggle. And that really is the art of advocacy, trying to cut through and making sure that those issues that you care about, you do so in a concerted fashion. But just like I'm sure Ukrainians have inspired Iranians, and Iranians in turn inspired Afghans, it's important that we point out to the world that Iran is not only a menace to its own people, but it's a menace to the security of Europe, and it's a menace to its own region. We're all in this cause together. European governments can't pretend that Iran will just, at some point change its stripes and do anything to promote international stability. In fact, to the contrary, as we know full well, Iran has provided drones to Russians. So this commonality of the challenge that faces Iranians within Iran and Western governments is something that we should be highlighting and making sure that politicians in the West recognize full well how important it is that they take concerted action against Iran, because that's good for Iranians and it's good for global security. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's bunch together a few final questions. Gentleman in the front.
Yes. Yeah, my name is Farman Kalaye, and I've been called worse. So, first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Karim Sadjadpour and Banu Safai, and for being here and being the voice. In Iran, we say Shir Zand. You're really an exemplary leader. Thank you very much for everything you have done. One of the key questions that's been in my mind is that Islamic radicalism, as we know it in the last 44 years, started in Iran, which was a gift, unwanted gift from Europe. We are blamed for it, but also the idea of Iran becoming a democratic, secular government could be a country, could be the start of a new, DNA for Middle East. There's no question about that. But my question is a characterization of this social movement and social behavior that's happening in the streets of Iran, but they're knocking off the turban off the people, clerics. It just questions the entire legitimacy of the regime. However, you have a megaphone, you have a platform. If we start characterizing this social movement as a Renaissance movement, I think Europeans maybe can relate to it a little better. What do you think?
That's a very good question. Let me bunch together a couple more. Was there any on this side? Gentleman in the back. And then we'll go to here, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you so much. My name is Hiva Kamangar. I'm with Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights. So, talking about IRGC and listing as, designating as a terrorist group, and we all know the stories from Strasbourg to Brussels. And so my question is, are there any diplomatic high-level communications going on between European Union or Canada and United States to basically try to save time and try to avoid reinventing the wheel? Because we know that back in 2017 and 2019, they have been enlisted as an FTO. Thank you.
And final question here.
I appreciate it. This is Arshia Komeli. My stage name is AK Arshi. I'm a rapper director from Houston, Texas. And we had the opportunity to meet at the protest. So it's a pleasure to be here. And so the thing that I want to talk about is, it's a question. How can we keep younger people more involved? Because my generation feel left out, to be honest. And we are powerful in the streets. But when it comes to societies like this, we don't really have that much representation. And because you're also connected to people in European Parliament, I want to ask if maybe you can keep them more involved. Maybe I want to be more in touch with the younger audience a little bit more, because I have a big fan base. I have a big social media following, and unfortunately, I see the same thing, especially from kids in Iran, that they do feel left out. So how can we keep them more involved? Because that's important, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Ali, do you want to begin and go to Darya?
Sure. I'll begin by saying yes, absolutely, of course, the courageous young Iranians feel left behind. Let's not forget that every revolution that has happened in Iran, and we can start with the constitutional revolution, started because Iranians were of the opinion at that particular juncture that they were not keeping up with the rest of the world. So I certainly understand the frustration of young Iranians who want to see and live a life which is very similar to the lives we can all lead elsewhere. But we cannot despair. Despairing is a very simple thing to do. I would suggest that rather than despair, we should all redouble our efforts. Again, it's important that we tell European parliamentarians and North American politicians how important this is. We have done that. They all know what a terrible regime the Islamic Republic is. And now we got to demonstrate that we're committed to see change within Iran. We have to build relationships with politicians. It's not only about demonstrating, it's about, each of us going and meeting with congressmen, going and meeting with senators, going and meeting with members of parliament and saying, listen, we have some solutions. And no solution could be more powerful, in my opinion, than making sure that European and North American countries act in a coordinated fashion. When you're dealing with an entity such as the IRGC, I really want to see all the Western countries actually sharing intelligence, helping each other out to make sure that they can get in the way of the activities of the IRGC, not only in Europe and in North America, but in South America as well. This is an illegal entity that engages in criminal activity. So it's high time that we remind Western politicians that they should all be working together to make sure that they can defang the IRGC and that they support the people of Iran. Thank you.
About the first question, is it Renaissance and Islam? I should say this is absolutely a Renaissance. And also when I am talking with my colleagues and in Parliament, I emphasize on the point that Islam is a religion like every other religion, but it has also Sharia laws, and which makes it much complicated. And also it's very in the highest point of Middle Ages, actually, is like Christian religion. They had it before 500 years ago. The Islamic Republic has made it that it takes the power now in 20th century and now in 21st century. So when I'm talking about it and I say just you should be grateful to Iranian people who are bringing a change in a religion which is, for the moment today, in a lots of countries there, is also a sort of related to a very aggressive and radical form of it. But Iranian people is going on working on it so that it becomes again a religion just for calming your heart like a religion should be. But this is very important to continue to emphasize it, because they see how in this last 40 years, 30 years, also Islamism has taken a very big place in Europe, whole Europe. And they want also to get rid of this political form of Islam. And I say the solution is in Iran. Just help those people to win. About the second question about IRGC, I should say we are in contact with lots of countries, and also I should say that about the ministers, for example, of European Union, the countries of European Union, those ministers, they are not all against to put the IRGC on the list. There are lots of them who want it. And recently I have read a report about why Germany wants to put it, for example, because IRGC has helped on the extreme right swings, extreme rights, anti-Semitism in Germany for against the Jewish community. This is just awful. And that's how there are lots of ministers who want to realize it, and they are continuing to discuss it together. And I am sure if we are also continuing our fight, we will win. And about the last question and about the young people in Iran, I should say we are responsible for them. We should do everything that we have in power. Even if we don't have it in power, we should seek the power to be their voices and to make them free, because this is the revolution of 57 has happened because of lots of mistakes who has given the hand to each other. The generation of our parents or grandparents, they didn't do their job as it should have been. So now that we know that we was the victims of those irresponsibility of giving a country like this to Islamists, now we are responsible to taking back this country for our next generation. And I have a daughter of 21 and a son of 16, and my dream is like their dream. They are born in Belgium, but they dream of going back to Iran one day. I hope that we can manage it, but we should be their voice, and we will continue to support them. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for coming all the way from Europe, from Canada
Pleasure.
to join us. I know I speak on behalf of not only everyone in the room, but millions of Iranians worldwide to thank you for your commitment, your role models, public service. We know it's not an easy job, but we really appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
As Karim said, thank you to Ali Ehsassi and to Darya Safai, but thanks also to you, Karim, for your estimable moderation of this conversation. And thanks to each and every one of you who joined us in person today from the diplomatic corps, from the media, activists from across the country, think tank experts, and to those who've been watching this event live and who will watch it later, for joining us as Mufti unveiled the maximum support policy. In the coming weeks and months, you'll hear more about maximum support, not only about the proposed components of this policy, but also on Mufti's follow-up on the implementation of each of these 15 points. So thank you to our speakers, and thank you to all of you for being here today.